Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and welcome back to HerbRally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. I lost count of how many episodes. I want to say we're at like 592 without looking at my phone right now. But yeah, so about 590 plus episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes, and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's episode, actually going to be releasing 3 episodes all in one day. I've pre-recorded these. This has been a long time coming. This is the Herbalist Hour. This is a new series of podcasts that I will be your host, as opposed to just doing these pre-roll talks. So I'm actually getting into the interview game. You may have even heard these interviews on our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we come out with new videos about 1 to 3 times per week on average. But yeah, so this is the Herbalist Hour. Our first guest is Jiling Lin. And when Amanda and I went on our cross-country road trip, we stopped in Ventura, California, and had the opportunity to sit down with Jiling, get to know her a little bit better, and ask her a bunch of fun herbal questions. So I really hope you enjoy the Herbalist Hour. Still working on my interview skills, so if you ever have any feedback about the interviews, you can feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube video. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes, or you could just email me, mason@herbrally.com. It's been a lot of fun and a lot less scary than I thought it would be. So to learn more about Jiling, you'd go to jilinglin.com or follow her on Instagram at Lin Jiling. I'll leave links to those in the show notes. Also, before we get into the show, I want to let you know about a couple of upcoming classes with good friend of HerbRally, Christa Sinadinos. The first one is this herbal medicine making course. They're going to be held on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time from March 11th through April 22nd, 2023. And here are some of the things that you're going to learn. You'll learn how to calculate menstruum ratios and determine alcohol percentages. You'll learn the optimal extraction methods for fresh and dry plants. You'll learn alcohol and glycerin-based menstruums, acetum, that's vinegar extracts, oxymels and shrubs. You'll learn about herb-infused syrups, honeys, and pastilles. You'll learn how to prepare delicious medicinal teas, hot and cold infusions, and decoctions, and a whole lot more. As always, I'm not going to read the entire event landing page or class landing page, but definitely check out the herbal medicine making course with Christa Sinadinos, and also wanted to let you know about her other class coming up. It's called Medicinal Herbs A to Z, and it's a 2-part course, and you're going to learn all about nutritive herbs, mucous membranes, immune and respiratory system, nervous system, digestive system, all the systems. And yeah, I really can't highly recommend Christa enough. She wrote this epic tome of a book called, off the top of my head, The Essential Guide to Western Botanical Medicine. If you don't have that, definitely check out that book as well. I'm going to leave a link to these events, plus her book and her website, all in the show notes. That's christasinadinos.com, though. Oh, and just to give you the date, the Medicinal Herbs A to Z Part 1 starts March 14th and goes through April, and then Part 2 starts May 30th and goes through June 27th. So again, christasinadinos.com. Link to those will be in the show notes. And also, before we get into the show, I'd like to read yet another Apple Podcast written review, and this was a 5-star review left by Moonchild333, and they say, "Podcast as varied as herbalism. What I love most about your podcast is the vast amount of subjects you cover. Herbalism is not a spring through fall occurrence. Herbalism is a way of life that covers all seasons, cultures, and people, just like your podcast. I truly believe that your podcast is one of the few that reflects that, as it should. I'm so grateful for you, your team, and the materials covered in your podcast from all paths, environments, and perspectives. You truly offer something for everyone. Keep up the wonderful work." So thanks, Moonchild333. I think you hit the nail on the head, and yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Really show a diverse subjects and herbalists and all different aspects of herbalism, because that's what I like to learn. That's how I like to learn, and I figure there's some of you out there that like that as well. And if not, you can always pick and choose which podcast episodes you listen to. So if you have a moment, please consider leaving us an Apple Podcast written review. I'm actually running out of ones to read. I think we've got like 36 written reviews, and I'm almost out because I read these sometimes before the show. And yeah, if I want to keep reading them, I'll have to start all over. So please leave us a review if you haven't already. And last but not least, I'd like to plug the HerbRally Schoolhouse. We just came out with part 1 of Lorna Trigg Skydancer's Chickweed class, where it's in the classroom school garden. where she just teaches us all about chickweed, what a wonderful plant it is. And then part 2, we're going to go into her kitchen, and she's going to show us how to make a chickweed salve. Now, these are video classes. They also come with downloadable audio. Some of the classes have associated PDFs and stuff like that, but we're up over around 40 classes right now in the HerbRally Schoolhouse, and we add new classes to it each week. So if you're looking to support the HerbRally Podcast, one of the best ways to do that is become an HerbRally Schoolhouse member. It's only $10 a month, but if you'd like to try your first 30 days for free, you could use coupon code PODCAST at checkout. So that's herbalist.com/schoolhouse. Use coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days free. So that's going to do it for me today. Actually, that's not true. I'm going to release 2 more episodes today. So you're going to get 3 episodes all in one day, all Herbalist Hour stuff. And just a huge thanks to all of you listening, and I hope you enjoy the Herbalist Hour. Let me know. Take care. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. The content in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to cure, diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. This information has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. We are not doctors, nor do we play one on the internet. Please seek advice from a qualified healthcare professional. Okay, MC Calico, take it away.
Yeah. Smoking herbal blends. We need some Mullen and some Kush, my brethren. While listening to HerbRally Podcast again. Herbalism at its finest with Mason Hutchinson. Yeah.
All right, well, welcome everybody. This is the first episode of the Herbalist Hour, and I can't believe it. HerbRally, the podcast, has over 570 episodes.
Wow.
And this is the first interview. I can't believe it. So here we are with Jiling Lin in her nice home here in Ventura, California. Amanda and I were on a road trip right now. We're absolutely loving this city. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thanks for coming to visit good old Ventura.
That's right. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to do some of our Ask an Herbalist questions, which basically for the audience, that's questions that we received from you all. What would you like to ask your favorite herbalist? So we received just a ton of submissions, and we kind of compiled them down to about 20 questions or so, and then we picked our favorites to ask you. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is kind of get to know Jiling a little bit better. And me personally, I'm just curious, how did your childhood play into becoming an herbalist? And selfishly, I kind of want to know because I worked with you through Mountain Rose Herbs, and you worked with us on one of our first, was it the first journal? Maybe the very first journal.
It was the first journal, yeah.
And I just really appreciated your article on urban foraging. So I kind of want to just hear about your introduction to herbalism via maybe your family and just urban foraging and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Thanks, Mason. Well, thanks for having me on for the inaugural Herbalist Hour.
There you go.
With HerbRally. So glad to be here. My family immigrated to the U.S. in the 80s, and so I'm first generation Taiwanese American, and it's really interesting growing up within a Taiwanese household within a predominantly white neighborhood and having these Taiwanese cultural traditions at home, speaking Chinese only at home, and then going to school and speaking English only at school, and having this really different mishmash of cultures in growing up. So we had a little garden growing up. We went hiking quite a bit. We would take walks after most meals in the evening time. Usually take a walk before settling in for the night. Played outdoors a lot and was kind of restless. So I was required to complete my homework before I could go play outside, and would play outside until it got dark and it was time to come in for supper. And my mom liked to do the gardening, and on our walks around town in the evening time, we would notice what was growing in the trees and notice what plants were growing around us and notice fruit, which was the topic of that article that you spoke to with the First Mountain Rose Journal called Fruiting Beauty, and in reference to finding and foraging fallen fruit in urban landscapes. And that came from experiences growing up, which my parents are still doing in the same town that I grew up in. So they've been there now. I'm in my mid-30s, so they've been there for almost 40 years now. So very familiar with all the fruit trees and very familiar with everything that's growing around. So those experiences over there in the town that we grew up walking and finding food, and also not just food plants, but also flowers, and getting to know the neighborhood in other ways, the birds and the little critters and the pets and the other humans as well. And then every weekend, starting in 1995, we would go to the meditation center, where I ended up becoming a really big part of my growing up as well, and camping out at the meditation center every weekend. So that was more in the desert area of Southern California. And in camping out every weekend, really got to know that environment too. Lots of running around in the desert hills and cavorting in the hills with other children and making up games and stories and telling stories about the stars, telling stories about the hills, chasing after lizards and picking plants, not knowing what they were, rubbing them in our hands and smelling our hands and making up stories and making up brews and all kinds of fun
Did you
things.
say making up brews?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of brews?
Well, you know what kids do, like pick little plants here and there and smash them with stones and pretend that we're making like food or medicine or the things that we actually do make with plants now as herbalists, but in a make-believe world of childhood imagination.
So cool.
Yeah,
so you guys were like urban foraging. I want to say from the story I remember avocados.
yes.
Is that true? Okay.
There's a lot of avocados.
And you said your mom is still doing that to this day, your mom and dad?
Buckets. Buckets. When it's the season, buckets. Yeah.
I just love that. For some reason, that just sounds so idealistic to me. But yeah, I'm sure
to Southern California.
Yeah, I love it. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm used to the Northwest, but yeah. Oh man, buckets of avocados. I love
buckets.
that.
Yeah, buckets of avocados.
Lots of guac.
Like so much guac. Yeah. So they're like always trying to give avocados away to other people, because when they walk by and they see all the avocados, they like can't help themselves.
Yeah.
Like gather as much as they can, go home, and maybe drive back if it's like covering the floor, where sometimes after a big windstorm there can be avos all over the floor.
Yeah, for some reason avocados is the thing that sticks out in my memory, but I'm sure there was other plants and food that you guys harvested. So what else were you harvesting?
Lemons,
okay.
limes,
Yeah.
pomegranates,
Yeah.
persimmons.
Yeah, on our
Oranges.
drive out here, I want to say we saw a ton of lemons. Is that possible even in this time, or am I just seeing things like so for reference, we were driving out in January. Are there lemons fruiting right now, or was I seeing some other fruit on our drive out here?
There's lemons.
There
right
is
now.
lemons. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
There's guavas as well.
Guavas.
Not right now, but
Okay.
throughout the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. I want to know how that childhood sounds super cool, your relationships to plants and wild foods. I mean, that's essentially a wild food that you're harvesting there with but I'm curious, what led you to herbalism as a discipline, as a study, and who did you study with, and at what age were you when you were first starting to like read herbalism books? And I know you studied with Seven Song. Was there anyone in between that, you and Seven Song, or like an after? Like, what was actually you also went to NCNM, which is now NUNM, right, in Portland?
Yes.
Yeah, which is where I believe I met you. Kind of what led you to herbalism as like a profession and a discipline?
How far back do you want to go?
I want to start at the very beginning.
Oh gosh.
From avocados to Seven Song to NUNM or
At the very beginning? Come on, Mason, it's late.
how about this? Whatever we got time for.
Whatever we got time for. All right, let's see how I can make this succinct.
Sure.
So I went to college for art.
Okay.
My major was in art.
Okay.
Yeah, and during art school, I got really into photojournalism, and my plan was to enter into the world of newspaper photography and set my sights for National Geographic, like adventures and photography and storytelling, all about it. But right after graduation, I had this big climbing accident. I broke both of my wrists. The left side of my face got scraped off, fractured my skull, fractured my chin, like all kinds of lucky to be here kind of accident. So after that accident, obviously I couldn't hold a camera for a bit and went into this big existential crisis. Like, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I still here? Like in so much pain that I couldn't walk. Like something I really took for granted. Like, oh, I could go on adventures. I can do whatever I want to do. The world is my oyster. I can do anything. I'm young. I just graduated from college. I'm intelligent. I could do anything. And so suddenly not being able to do my profession, can't even go for hikes, very difficult. So eventually, after what felt like a really long time, but actually was a pretty fast recovery, I was 20, so fast recovery, went back into photojournalism, working for a newspaper, and just like, it wasn't, the fire was no longer there. Yeah, or the fire that I originally experienced and felt was there was no longer there. And so I started traveling around the country, hitchhiked around the country, went from farm to farm, and eventually found myself in Connecticut doing outdoor education, teaching outdoor education classes for a school called Great Hollow Wilderness School. And in teaching the outdoor education, actually before that outdoor school, there was another outdoor school in Utah, there was another outdoor school in Wisconsin. Like, I got more into the outdoor school thing and got into plant medicine. But in Connecticut, there was, I can't remember his name right now, but my nickname for him was Plant Man. Because every time we did anything together, he was always like, oh, that plant is this, and this is what it does. Oh, that plant is that, and this is what it does. Here's the common name, here's the Latin name. And I'm just like, oh, you're so cool, Plant Man. Teach me all you know, Plant Man. I'm here for it.
That's awesome.
I can't remember his name, so sad.
Plant Man's good enough.
Plant Man's good enough. Yeah, and started learning more and more about plants. And after that summer working at Great Hollow, left Connecticut, came back to Connecticut because of a sweetheart, and at a women's circle met an herbalist. There was someone prior to this in Utah. I said I was traveling and hitchhiking all over the country. So there was someone in Utah, an elder of mine, who had called me an herbalist. And it was the first time I'd heard the term, because by that time I had started making these little sachets of herbs and just passing them around throughout my travels, because I was picking these different plants as I was learning about the plants and drying them and gathering them. Like, oh, these smell good together. They feel good together. I'm going to give it to you. I don't know what it does, but I'm going to give it to you. Keep it. Potpourri.
Potpourri.
Potpourri. And so at this women's circle, I met Lucy Michella, who's the mom of Ananda Wilson, who's a second-generation herbalist, primarily working with perfumery for Gather Perfume now. Also, she's in Massachusetts now. She used to be in Connecticut, where I met her. And Lucy was selling creams and chapstick and oils, and her hair was hennaed red, and she's like beautiful and strong and like really wild, shiny eyes. And like, who are you? She's an herbalist. Like, do you want to hang out? So we start hanging out. We just start learning more and more, and eventually leave the U.S. to go back to Taiwan on a one-way ticket, study with acupuncturists and herbalists and permaculture and yoga teacher training in India and massage training in Thailand, just, continuing the travels, teaching English for money in Taiwan, which is the only thing a foreigner can do over there.
Yeah.
and learning a lot. And after 3 years abroad, at some point was like, I feel like it's time to come back to the US. And considering different options, I'd remembered that on Facebook, I'd seen this photograph of a Luna moth by someone named Seven Song. And this photo so fascinated me that I'm like, who is Seven Song? I'd looked into his stuff. I'm like, pretty interesting. Oh, he takes on 3 apprentices a year. Why not? I'll apply. So applied for the apprenticeship and came back to the US for Seven Song. And then after studying with Seven Song for a year, which is incredible, very rich, very busy year, moved to Colorado, studied at the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism, and then wandered around a little bit more, primarily dwelling in the landscape of Western herbalism. So started clinic and projects down in Arizona, and then left Arizona and went back to Connecticut, started teaching my own stuff in Connecticut, and then at some point decided, I want to learn more about my own herbal roots. So let's commit to 4 years of school again.
That's what the 20s are for.
By then I was in my early 30s.
Okay.
Starting to feel it a little bit. Like I want to make a living in a more clear way.
Sure.
But also there's something that's missing.
Yeah.
So 4 years of school and a tiny bit of debt later.
And that was NCNM at the time, right?
Yeah. So I started off at in Florida for the Academy for 5-Element Acupuncture.
Okay.
And then I moved over to Portland for the National University of Natural Medicine. And then spent 2 years over there, and then came back to Southern California to finish up the 4 years of school at Alhambra Medical University, primarily to save money staying at my parents' place again.
There you go.
Because NUNM is pretty expensive.
Saving money at your parents' house, eating like a lot of free avocados, probably.
Yeah, getting fat and happy on avos. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's, it sounds like you were just kind of following the breadcrumbs the whole way. Like, it sounds like you were very led by your heart.
It
wouldn't
feels
you say?
like that.
Yeah, like looking back, it kind of all makes sense, right?
Yeah. In the moment, I think my parents might have had many a sleepless night.
I bet,
Yeah.
but I bet you kind of knew maybe what you were doing, or
I think I was having a great time.
I bet.
I don't know if I knew it. I didn't know what I was doing. No, I was having a good time.
Yeah, that's really cool. It sounds like you had a lot of different experiences, lots of different teachers, and I think it kind of created this like well-rounded approach to how you do your herbalism now.
It feels like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the journey reflects my current approach. Like my current approach feels like there's Western herbalism.
Sure.
There's Chinese medicine. There's embodiment practices. There's outdoor education. Like it's all woven in, and I feel like I have a nice sack of options for the different people that I get to work with.
Yeah, and just before we came over today, you were practicing acupuncture.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really neat. I love hearing that. It's so cool. There's so many different ways that you can make a living as an herbalist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really neat. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Did you want to answer any of these Ask an Herbalist questions?
Let's go.
And just kind of rip on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, these were submitted by the audience, and I'm curious. Amanda and I were curious, so here we go. What is your favorite resource for learning herbalism, or some of your favorite resources for learning herbalism?
My favorite resource is what we call dirt time. So what that means is spending time outside, spending time with the plants in their natural environment. One of my early teachers, Doug, in Utah, New Mexico, somewhere in the desert southwest, New Mexico, Doug in New Mexico, whose last name I can't remember, but he learned a bunch simply by being outdoors. And that I remember when I first started learning, and that was in the desert. There's Lirea tridentata or chaparral, and like approaching chaparral with my eyes closed under the guidance of a different teacher, Dave Holliday, and just like extending hands and feeling for the fingers, the little leaves of the Lirea tridentata, and feeling those leathery leaves, and like following the arms of the Lirea up and feeling that wiggly arm, like you know what Lirea looks like, right?
Sure, yeah, we were just hanging out with Lirea and Howie and Christina's house,
Yeah, so just feeling that and like feeling the stickiness of the leaves and smelling that scent and just getting this full embodied experience of this plant before reading books, before talking with other people, like if possible getting to know this plant in this full-bodied way. So that's my favorite way to get to know the plants, and that was my initial way of getting to know the plants. When it comes to Chinese herbalism though, there's some of these plants that I have never met in person. In its live, in the flesh form, in its native environment. And the question was around how some resources for getting to know plants. So in that way, I love listening to podcasts. So Mountain Rose puts on some really great podcasts. Y'all put on some really great podcasts. Free resources in that way.
Tea Talks with Jiling.
You're welcome. That's right.
Yeah, podcasts are invaluable resources. And you probably have some more to say, but I just want to say we just did a plant meditation with Jesus Garcia in Austin, Texas. And it's so, it's interesting because you always want to think about like the books you read or the websites or the podcasts, and I'm glad that you started with like your personal experiences with the plants, because like I said, we did a plant meditation with him, and I was just like kind of sitting there and like kind of rooting down and like listening to the plant meditation and feeling it, and like we were specifically focusing on it was called the wild daga. Do you know that plant? It's in the mint family. I can't remember the specific genus, but it was just really interesting to kind of feel the energetics of that particular plant without essentially knowing anything about it. So it was really cool, and I love that you kind of start your resources recommendation with kind of just sitting with a plant, if I interpreted that correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me of Paul Bergner's Learning Wheel. I think it's in the South sits the personal experience piece. In the West sits the intuition piece, which plant meditation would fall somewhere between that West and South place of personal experience and intuition. Up in the North are botanical ancestors, like what comes from history, what's been written down by Culpeper and Shanong and all these herbal ancestors that we've got. And then over in the East comes science and all this new technological stuff that we've got in the modern age.
It plays a part.
So it's this well-rounded way of looking at how do we come to learn. Like we've got all these different resources, but the most accessible way is like, this is my body, this is how I experience things. Like I can read all I want. There's so much information right now. How not to get overwhelmed, just root back into what's present.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to cut you off. We got experience and podcasts. Did you have other ones you wanted to recommend, or?
Books. Yeah. There's so many herbal books though.
Sure.
More and more.
Yeah.
Where it's really interesting listening to podcasts with older herbalists who are talking about how back in the day, which is not that long ago, like within the lifespan of like Seven Song, Sean even, that there were no herbal books around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, now there's just an abundance of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess that brings us to one of the other audience questions that you had about book recommendations.
Sure, yeah. I think the question was, what are 5 books you recommend to beginning herbalists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love Rosemary's books. I feel like they're really accessible. They're written for open audience.
Yeah.
One of the first books that was given to me by Lucy Michella, one of my first teachers, was Rosemary's
Yeah.
Herbal Healing for Women by Rosemary
There you go.
Gladstar.
Yeah.
Should I just run in and out?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
This one, for the beginner who likes big words, Medical Herbalism with David Hoffman. And some medicine making books. We've got The Modern Herbal Dispensatory, a medicine making guide by Thomas Easley and Stephen Horn. So this one has a nice little materia medica section as well as some medicine making. For a classic older medicine making book. We've got the Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook with Mr. James Green. Do you have that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've
Signed.
Signed.
I get all the herbalists to sign the books to Amelia. So,
Wow.
So she's going to inherit a library of like 30 herbalism books, and she won't care about any of them. They'll all be signed to her.
For growing plants, this book by Juliet Blanket-Sporer. Have you seen this one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got that. Yep.
This one is beautiful.
Maybe signed, I don't know.
So The Healing Garden
Yep.
with Juliet for growing plants. And then also this one for growing plants.
You're such an herbalist.
Grow Your Own Herbal Remedies with Maria Noel Groves is also a beautiful How to Grow Your Own Herbal Garden book.
I'd say that was about 5.
I think that was more than 5.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
That's a nice collection.
Yeah, I feel like that was a well-rounded selection of medicine making, growing plants, recipes with rosemary.
Did you think about the answer before I asked you?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, also that's a commonly asked question.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very standard, yes, run-of-the-mill question.
Yeah.
Ooh. What's your favorite way to introduce children to herbalism?
Yeah. So I actually just wrote an article about this.
Nice.
Yeah, so that'll be coming out in spring. Actually, I'm not sure when it's. I think it's coming out in spring.
Is that going to be on your website or?
That's going to be on the next Mountain Rose
Nice.
Journal.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. We'll link to that for sure.
Yeah, it's called Playing with Plants.
Okay.
Botanical games, practices for children.
Sweet.
I think that's the name that we settled on.
Okay.
I can't remember. There's a lot of back and forth with the editor.
I know the drill.
You know the drill. Yeah, so with kids. So for one kid, it's different if you have one child as opposed to with a group of children. But one of the first things that I love to do is making up the name of a plant. So for example, let's say we're walking into a place and there's, I like to begin with toxicodendron, the poison ivy. So let's say it's a kid that's never met poison ivy before, even if you're with a group of children who some of the children know poison ivy, I'll just preface it with, hey, so if you know this plant already, don't give it away. Let other people have a surprise. So tell me what you see. And so people will say, oh, the leaves are shiny, maybe they're a little bit red, it's crawling up. If it's a vining poison ivy, maybe there's lobe, or it's rounded. They wouldn't say lobes. It's rounded on the edge of the leaf. There's 3 of them, or whatever else they're noticing. Or if it's a plant that you can touch, let's say a monarda or a type of mint, like rub the leaf, smell the flower, tell me what you notice. So starting again with the senses, starting again with organoleptics around what can you see, what can you smell, if it's something which is okay to taste, what do you taste, what does it feel like, starting with that. And then let's tune into the plant. What would you name this plant, or what does this plant tell you its name is? So first either coming up with the name for a plant or intuiting the name for a plant before opening up the books and discerning, okay, this plant is poison ivy, Toxicodendron radicans in the Anacardiaceae, blah, 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 blah. Like first coming to their own relationship with, and maybe making up a story like, oh, what kind of secrets does this plant tell you about it? Or what do you feel when you're sitting next to this plant? Oh, I feel excited. I really want to touch it. So having that questioning mindset. I love playing games. So the one handkerchief game that I talk about in the article is where, when walking along the trail, assuming that you already know some of the plants in this area, and if it's okay to pick plants in this area, as you're walking, just surreptitiously picking a leaf here, a flower there, just different identifiable parts of a plant, and gathering it into a cloth. So maybe about 5 to 10 plants, depending on the age of the child, into the cloth. And then when you get to a place where it's good to stop, calling the child or the children over and having the cloth set down on the ground with the plants in an arrangement, and being like, okay, you have 5 seconds or 10 seconds to take a look at what's here. Remember. So unveil what's on the cloth, have the kids take a look, and then close it back up and tell them, okay, now go and gather that. And it's a big challenge. It's really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm curious do you have any memories of what kids have said particular plants' names were? Like, has any stood out to you? That just sounds like such a fun activity.
It's so much fun.
And I'm thinking, like, what would a kid say Poison Oak's name was, you know?
Yeah.
Like, does anything come to mind, or?
I've had some really fun names over the years.
Yeah.
Like fairy things and the animal names.
Sure.
But I can't remember specifics.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah. I think Shiny Red was one of the names for Toxicodendron,
Sure.
maybe. Yeah.
By the way, does poison oak grow down here in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of it in Eugene, Oregon. So.
Yeah, it's one of our native forest protectors.
Okay. Yeah. I like looking at it like not as an enemy, but it's got a purpose, right?
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Shout out to Jim McDonald.
Okay. Is that what he teaches?
Oh,
or?
yeah. Jim loves poison oak and poison ivy. I remember in Oregon actually walking with Jim outside of Mountain Rose area in the hills above.
For your herbalism project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we saw a little bit of poison oak, and he was just like, oh, wow! Wow! Like so excited.
Yeah.
Like I walked around the plant, and Jim was like, ah!
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Did you want to share anything about that experience, about maybe what he said about poison oak specifically, or as far as like having it as an ally, or?
Yeah, so Jim has an article about it somewhere on his website about, I think his perspective is similar as mine as far as this plant is a protector of the forest and likes to live on the edge in this disturbed soil and keep the people who are not being watchful away from these areas. And I think he was particularly fascinated because he's in Michigan, Mitten State. Yep. In Michigan, it's the poison ivy, whereas over here we have poison oak. I can't remember what the species is for that one over there. So the similarities and differences he was really fascinated by. So the little curly Q tendrils that we have on our poison oak, poison ivy also have the ability to crawl across the ground and also go up trees. Both of them have that. And then the little nuances, like ours, I think, is more lobed, just a little bit more lobed, and theirs is just a tiny bit more toothed, if I remember correctly. Like just tiny little subtle differences that he was going gaga over for a while.
Love it. Next question is, what advice do you wish you had as an herbal student?
So I thought about this one for a while. Yeah, because I feel like that I've followed my nose pretty well and landed myself in some pretty fun places.
Totally.
So something that I tell other people a lot that I feel like I didn't really need because I did is to follow the golden thread. Because I feel like oftentimes the world can get in the way and it can be easy to well, especially right now with social media and technology and all these glittery distractions, it can be easy to lose the way, or lose the way with like, I need to have a normal job and do the standard thing and to make the money and have security and whatnot. However, on a personal level, I wish that I knew more about organization of materials and ideas prior to my entire education. Like, I wish I learned this in high school before entering college. And then now as an herbalist and a clinician and a teacher too, I wish I had better organization of my previous educational experiences. Because going back into my notes from herb school with Seven Song and from different herb conferences and herb school in Colorado and Chinese medicine school and all these different educational things, my notes are undecipherable. They're useless. Like all these hours of being in school, it's all within me, but all the stuff that I have on paper is gathering dust and probably eventually just going to get recycled. So I wish that someone had taught me how to take notes digitally and organize those digital notes in a functional way, and also how to quote my teachers properly, because now I can remember some things that different teachers have said over the years, but I can't quote verbatim if I want to reference someone in an article that I'm writing, or even in teaching and gathering slides for teaching. I wish I could quote and honor my teachers better. So learn how to organize your materials, young herbalist.
Yeah, I have a question about following the golden thread, but before that, do you think that you're able to organize your quotes and your thoughts and all of that better now? Do you take that forward, that advice that you are giving to the new herbalist? Do you do that nowadays?
Yeah.
And if so, like, what do you do? Do you is there like a note-taking app or anything like that that you rely on, or how do you do that nowadays?
That's a wonderful question. Google and Trello.
Yeah.
So on Google, using Google Drive and having folders organized in Google Drive, and primarily Google Docs.
Okay.
So when I'm making notes live, like when I'm taking a course that's a multi-week or multi-month or year-long course, or a longer period course, then I'll have these live notes on Google Notes. And then once the course is complete, I'll reorganize that, extract the quotes and whatnot that I think I will keep and hold on to in the future, and then turn the whole thing into a PDF and take it from live document on Google into something which is on my desktop only, because I'm still using only the free version of Google, and there's limited storage on there.
Sure.
Yeah, and then if it's something that I'll reference more often, then I'll put it into a Dropbox, which I can access on phone or iPad. Usually when I'm navigating in clinic, it's on iPad, and so it's easy to look at Dropbox with the app.
I love that you're actually referencing this stuff in clinic.
Yes.
It's because at this point it's so well organized that you're actually able to call on it when need be. And again, I still want to get to the golden thread thing, but so you are I know you're an acupuncturist, but you're actually a practicing herbal clinician as well.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's clinical work, which includes acupuncture and herbalism, and then lifestyle medicine, which includes yoga and movement and food and life. And then there's the teaching part. So clinic and classes.
Yeah, you're using all of, like every step of your journey, you're using that. I love that.
That's the hope.
So I don't know if you know this or not, but my Instagram account and my Facebook account both say in the bio, says following the golden thread.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
I never noticed.
Yeah. So that's something that I've lived by for probably at least 10 years now. It's been like one of my core philosophies. I actually got it from Stephen Herod Buhner. So I'm just curious where you heard that term, because when I actually got to meet him in Portland at NCNM.
Wow.
He came and spoke there once, and so I went and saw him. He said that to me, and I was just like, I was like, oh, that resonated with me so much. And I'm just kind of curious where you got that term from and how it kind of applies to your life.
Oh, I love that. That came from Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know Stephen
Yeah.
just passed.
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So blessings to Stephen's passage. Yeah. I can't remember exactly where it came from, but I feel like it's been a huge guiding force in my life. And in Chinese culture and language, we have something called 缘分, which best translation might be synchronicity or serendipity or something magical. And what 缘分 looks like in my head, and how I think this in my head version of 缘分 comes from some kind of ancient Chinese visual that I can't place right now, but it's a red thread, and it's this invisible red thread that connects people and situations and places with each other. So it's this magical red thread of connection that binds us together and is like fate. 缘分 is like fate. Like it's my 缘分 that I met you all these years ago, and we're still in contact, and now you're in my home.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's this 缘分, the red thread of connection, or what I see as a red thread of connection. And so this following the golden thread in a similar way feels like there's this path that is present at birth, and then the situations from life help to mold and shape this path that is present. And you know, if you fall off of this path, then other adventures might express themselves, and perhaps a new path is created from this path that you fall off of, and maybe eventually you'll come back to this original golden path. Maybe the path needs to change, but there's this golden thread which is weaving and connecting through life, like the red thread of 缘分. And to follow that is to follow your bliss. Thank you, Joseph Campbell. And then to not follow it would be to follow something which is something less than bliss, perhaps. Like there's so much possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I always feel like early on I think probably a lot of us are like this, but like wandering, lost, sad, this or that. But I noticed any time that I started like following my heart or following the golden thread, my life would just miraculously get better. You know what I mean? And so I've always tried to use that as my like guiding light, like follow the golden thread, follow my heart, and things kind of just continuously improve. Not to say that there's not challenges and obstacles to overcome, but thanks. Yeah. And I'll get the spelling of what you just said, because I want to look that up. So,
Yeah.
Thanks. That was really cool. It was, I totally resonated with everything you just said.
I didn't realize that was such a huge thing for you. That's really
Oh
awesome.
yeah, big time. Yeah, on social media, I don't include many like quotes or information or whatever, but in my bio, like I said, it's following the golden thread.
Wow.
Has been a very important part for me.
Aw.
Yeah. Moving right along. Yeah. That was a great answer. I love that.
Renfen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Renfen.
Yeah.
I want to get the spelling of that. I like spelling stuff.
Good. Especially when it's a different language that's not.
Yeah, that's true.
Not Roman.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the one thing you do daily to practice your craft?
You got so formal.
So I'm just really curious. What's the one thing you do daily to practice your craft?
So, Jiling. The one thing that I do daily to practice my craft, I drink tea every morning.
Love that.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same spot.
Same spot.
Very
I mean,
cool.
unless I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But every morning I have tea.
It's very cool.
Yeah. So the tea practice changes a little bit over time, but it's this consistent relationship with Camellia sinensis and different preparations of Camellia sinensis. So one plant. My favorite is pu'er.
Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one sits really well with me.
Yeah, that's the kind of like funkier fermented
Yeah.
Camellia sinensis green tea. Yeah, I used to drink a lot of that when I worked at Mountain Rose Herbs. That was one of my favorites. Right now we're drinking peace tea.
Yes.
So what you're saying is in the mornings you're always drinking Camellia sinensis, a green tea of some sort.
Pretty much, unless my belly's not feeling good and
Sure.
I need something a little gentler.
Yeah, so do you drink coffee?
No.
Never.
No, my hubby makes espresso in the morning times, and he'll let me have like a teaspoon.
Okay, that's enough. Yeah, there is something different about green tea caffeine and coffee caffeine that I notice.
Definitely.
And where were we? Oh yeah, we were just at Howie and Christina's house.
Oh.
And we had coffee in the morning, and then it was just so lovely to have I had some green tea, and I was just like, there's something about that drink. There's something so energizing, but it's not, I don't even know if it's the caffeine per se, but there's something so delightful about a good green tea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 So I love that.
Yeah. I love the plant itself and the feeling and the flavor of the plant, and I also love feeling this relationship with all the history that comes along with this plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the story of Shen Nong, one of the godfathers of Chinese herbalism, and how he's strolling in the garden, and Camellia sinensis happened to fall into his bowl of hot water, and he whiffed the scent and was enamored by the scent, and took a sip and was further enamored, and thusly discovered tea, cha.
Love that.
Right? So that's Shen Nong, and learning about tea and all this history with drinking tea.
That's so cool. Our good friend Giuseppe.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just so funny that he kind of fell into being the free tea guy.
I love
you
it.
know?
Yeah.
And I don't think he thinks of himself as like a tea expert or anything, but here he is traveling the nation, you know, serving free tea to everybody. And I just think that's such a cool way to build community. And yeah, it's not under like intoxicants or alcohol or anything like that, but like just being on his bus and hanging out with people is such a fun way to just hang out with people. And yeah, what a cool ritual.
Yeah.
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 So I think that leads us to our last question. What was it?
Dun, 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 dun.
I already know this question. I read it a million times.
Amanda's question.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite part about being an herbalist, and what's your big why that keeps you learning and growing? So that's a two-part question. So first, yeah, what's your favorite part about being an herbalist?
I love two parts to your two-part question. For part one of your two-part question.
Part A.
Part A.
1A.
Yes, for 1A. Here's two. I love plants. And what originally brought me into the world of herbalism was an excuse to get to know place better. I love spending time outside. I love wild places. I care about our environment and the upkeep of our planet Earth and all her beauty, and for the people and for the critters and for the plants. But being alive is such a gift, and we live in such a gorgeous world. And I feel so honored to be healthy and strong enough to get to explore it. And one of the ways of exploring it that makes sense to me, that has resonance with me, and that I have a particular gift for understanding and communicating with and about is the plant kingdom. Somehow, that's a ren fun that I got to walk into in this lifetime. So there's that part, is the personal / selfish reason of I love plants and I love learning and I love experiencing, and then the other part about that is the herbal realm with the education and the other humans and the ability to share and be of benefit. With the patients that I get to serve and the students that I get to teach. This is powerful medicine that is bountiful in the landscape in which we get to inhabit, as well as in our kitchens with kitchen herbalism, as well as in our ancestry with all the plants and all the people that tended to and learned about and worked with these plants throughout our personal history, as well as the history of whatever landscape it is that we get to inhabit, either short-term or the landscape of our birth, regardless of if that aligns with the landscape of our ancestral bloodlines. And there's just all these intersecting stories and magic and beauty that it feels like a gift to get to learn and experience, and it also feels like a gift to be able to be of benefit and give back in this way.
Love it.
Flipping that one back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like you said you were going to do. You were going to... It's just funny. I feel like it's my life's purpose to do this. I can't really see it any other way. It's a very odd experience. Like, how I got into herbalism was through nutrition. I got into nutrition because I was wondering why I felt so sad and so lost. And what I found was eating nutritious food actually helps make you feel better. So here I am, like a late teens kid trying to make himself feel better, and nutrition helped, other things helped, and then it's funny how nutrition just kind of led me into this world of plant medicine. You know what I mean? Like they seem to overlap a lot. In fact, I feel like a lot of the herbalists that I have come across are almost borderline nutritionists or dietitians in a way. So I kind of followed those breadcrumbs, or the golden thread, if you will, and then I just ended up becoming kind of obsessed with this whole world of herbalism. I met all of the characters in the not all of them, but a lot of the herbalism characters via like Herb Mentor Radio and that kind of thing, and I kept going and going and going, and just kind of fell in love with the whole thing. I liked adaptogens. I loved TCM and Ayurveda, and I just kind of kept building. And a lot of what I was really into was dried, cut and sifted herbs, which is great, right? But then when I got a job at Mountain Rose Herbs, I saw in the break room a pamphlet for the Columbine School of Botanical Studies. And so I was like, this is what I'm getting goosebumps thinking of it right now. I was like, that's next on my journey. I got to learn about these plants in their wild state, right? And I didn't know why, but the next thing I knew, I'm working at Mountain Rose Herbs. I quit my last job. I'm working at Mountain Rose Herbs. I'm taking an apprenticeship at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, and I'm spending hours and hours and hours out in the old growth forest in Oregon, learning about these plants and essentially building relationships with them. Whereas, like I said before, I think cut and sifted dried herbs are great, and I love going to apothecaries and stuff like that. But to actually get to hang out with them in their natural state and get to know like a lot of the natives and the weedy plants and stuff like that, it just became so intoxicating that I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to spend my whole life doing this. And I think that I have a particular skill set to interact with herbalists and you know, meet a lot of the people doing the teaching. I don't think that that's my particular skill set to do the teaching, but what I want to do is to highlight the people and to introduce the people to the people that are doing all of that amazing teaching, to get people out in the woods and to learn about this way of living. You know what I mean? So I think that that's what I have to offer, and so that's kind of why I do what I do. You know what I mean? So
I actually did not meet you at NUNM.
Really?
I met you at the Traditions in Western Herbal Conference.
That sounds
the
right.
same year that I met Giuseppe.
Wow.
And
okay.
Wolf
and
and
he
Kiva.
so he had his tea cart at the.
He had Kiva's, Edna Lou.
Okay.
And Ali. Ali was there too.
Right on. Shout out Ali.
Shout out to Ali. Yeah, I remember you at the Mountain Rose Herbs table.
Yeah.
And there was a big pile of lavender.
Yep, I knew you were going to say that.
Really? Did you remember
I
that?
said lavender in my head right before you said it. Yeah. Oh yeah. I should have said it for proof, but yeah.
Yeah, so there was a big pile of lavender there, and we're talking. I'm like gathering stickers, and I'm like, "That's a nice pile of lavender. You want it?"
Did I give it to you?
And I just thought it was a cool pile of lavender. I wasn't like, "Hey Mason, well, that's a nice pile of lavender." So, yeah.
That's funny.
And then you reached out to me out of the blue.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah,
For HerbRally?
for Mountain Rose.
Oh, for Mountain Rose.
Yeah,
Okay.
like, hey, do you want to write an article?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like somehow you make these connections with people, and then you're able to maintain these connections over time and put people together in these ways that make sense and work out and somehow maintain connections over time. And what a gift.
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't. That's not my wheelhouse. So we all fit into this herbal puzzle all together.
I think so.
Yeah, nice way.
That's a fun memory. I just have to know. So I reached out to you to do a collaboration with Mountain Rose even before we met at NUNM, or was it
after NUNM?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay,
after
cool.
NUNM.
Still,
At the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all coming back.
Yeah, this was when I had first started my website and my messaging thing.
JilingLin.com.
JilingLin.com. I didn't know how to work it yet. Okay. And you had sent me like 5 messages on my messaging thing.
It's like, Jiling hates me.
Right, and then you reached out to me on Facebook, and by then I was no longer checking Facebook. Like I just deleted my Facebook and changed to a new thing. And then you reached out on Instagram, but it landed in my spam box. And like eventually I looked at my spam box and I'm like, Mason, what are you doing in there?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Sweet. Well, thanks, Jiling.
We done?
Yeah, I think we're good.
It's over?
That's gotta be, we gotta keep that. Can you, to close it out, can you pretend to be me and look at the camera?
Hey guys. Let's try that again. Hey guys. This is Mason Hutchinson with HerbRally. Thanks for listening to our 6,000th show.
Episode 1 of the Herbalist Hour.
We love you guys.
We love you so much.
Thanks for supporting our homegrown operation.
She's a natural. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally Podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving text, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.